All right, so we're shifting gears now. I want to introduce to you Sable Badaki. You guys are going to absolutely love Sable. She is an absolute genius. She has 20 plus years of corporate and consulting experience all across the United States, and she's worked in several countries across Africa. So this is someone with truly a global perspective on leading your movement and your business globally. After sitting in too many rooms where no one else looked like her, she embarked on her mission to create workplaces where women can thrive. Utilizing her expertise in cross-cultural relations, HR, and diversity, she supports a community of diversity practitioners with diversity and inclusion strategies to grow their practice. Sable is the host of the HR for Her podcast, showcasing the issues impacting gender diversity, and she is a Goldman Sachs 10,000 Women's Scholar and nominated for the Yale University Visiting Executive Exchange Women's Program. So, you guys, please help me welcome Sable Badaki to the Lead Your Movement Challenge. Sable, it is so great to have you here. I'm so honored.
Gosh, I am super honored, and I thoroughly enjoyed David's talk. And I'm like, I'm going to get that manifesto.
I know, right? I mean, it's just we are like fired up here, right?
Yes,
So
yes.
I am so excited to have you on. I'm going to actually ask you to start by telling everybody a little bit about your business, because what you do is very unique. It's a little bit different than the other experts that we've had on so far to the challenge. So let's just start so people understand what exactly it is that your company does. And because you've also made a little bit of a transition recently.
I sure have. And so being my business, my global business of taking women entrepreneurs, we were taking them to other countries, introducing them to buyers, and helping them to grow their business. And one of my focus has always been in every business, how do we support women? How do we grow women? How do we get women to the next level? And one of the things we also, kind of were looking at is that we still have a whole lot of women in corporate, and how are we helping them to move forward? And one of the things we all know, like when you're an entrepreneur, especially if you're a consultant or you're coaching or training, you go out and source the product, can't even talk, you get it, and then you have to run back home, create it, run back, deliver it. And after that, I mean, how fast is your business really growing? And so we knew that that was just like such a slow drip. And we also realized that the market is also getting, really, especially now what's going on in terms of the diversity world, that is also getting a little crowded. So you definitely do not have the opportunity to just sit there and be at home creating content, hoping that you're going to really grow your business really fast. We also realized that, look, other countries, diversity is not just an American thing, but it is a global thing. And so other countries as well are looking for opportunities to do diversity work. And their work is a little different, but it's still the same, because sometimes we're talking about tribes, we're talking about caste systems that we're dealing with, and we're still always talking about gender. That seems to like never go away. So that never goes away. So we knew that if we really wanted these businesses to grow, if we really wanted to be able to support them, we needed to give them the part that they needed the most, which was the technical resources, the trainings, the case studies, the white papers, the insight papers, as we learned here in the Velocity world, and giving them that information so they can just now deliver. So it's like plug and play. So instead of them, once they get the brief from the client, coming back and spending another, really, it's 6 hours of development for every 1 hour of training. So by the time you develop some training, and then that assignment is one and done, and then you come back and you start all over, it's going to be really difficult. So we actually hand that training to them, plug and play. They just have to stick their logo on it, and they're off to go. Or, they can change up the slides if they want to. And what we also do for them is that we also realize that sometimes as consultants, because they haven't had like some of the opportunities that I would say I have been in Velocity, understanding about a discovery, in the beginning, to find out all your clients' needs. They're just so happy that they got that training, or they're just so happy that they got that one assignment. And I'm thinking, like, don't you want to come back after that? So what's the plan? So we actually kind of in the very beginning when they get the assignments, kind of sit with them and say, what's the long term? Like, okay, they told you you need this, but did you think about this? So this way we can also not only help them with that first assignment by maybe delivering a training to them they can get from us, but also helping them think about what's the next steps, what's the next opportunity that this could be. How do you end that training at the end that they're now saying, well, what's our next steps and can you help us? So it's really exciting. We just focus on diversity practitioners. Of course, right now it's been super busy with everything that's going on with everyone trying to get their work done. And especially right now, it's just crazy because people are getting more calls than they can actually handle. And so how else can they do that?
That's incredible. So that's incredible. So let me ask you a question. What do you think right now when it comes to the opportunities for folks who are diversity and inclusion experts? Because, I mean, here in the United States and around the world, what are those opportunities for folks right now, Sable? Because this is something that your firm is deep into right now. And the work that your firm is also doing, as well as supporting the people who are doing this work. What are the big opportunities? Because I know when it comes to leading a movement right now, there's tremendous interest from consultants and coaches and trainers and speakers to do more when it comes to diversity on race, on gender, and in other areas as well. LGBTQ, employees with disabilities. In fact, one of the folks who joined this challenge, she's in a field where she's helping companies to hire people with disabilities. So there's a lot of types of diversity right now that have changed the priority level has gone way up for these organizations.
So there is a lot of conversation around race, a lot of conversation. And what I want practitioners to do is when they're talking to their potential client or when they're working with the client is to realize that this is a marathon that they're actually working with their person. So right now, when you're talking to them, don't allow them to trap you into an unconscious bias training and then think like it's all over. And so, yes, race is very important, but even with race, there's so many intersectionalities with race that you have to be able to have a conversation about that as well. And so like you said, when you're talking to someone about race, are you also asking them how that's affecting the LGBTQ community? How is that affecting your differently able community? How is that affecting, women? So being able to not just say, well, okay, we're going to do unconscious bias training, we're going to talk about white privilege, and then we're going to walk out the door. But understanding that that's critical, but it's also critical that you look at it, across all the identities of the race. And it's also critical that you are able to talk to them about how they're building an inclusive culture. So we see a lot of conversation. People say, well, let's just hire. And we're saying, no, hire into the same toxic environment that you've been having. That's not going to work. So what you need to do is be able to build a culture. So it's very important as, consultants, as you're talking with corporates, to really be able to say, hey, you know what? Yes, I'm going to go in there and we can talk about unconscious bias training, but that's one item. That's not how you're going to change your organization. That's not how you're going to see a shift in your organization. So really being able to understand what's the root of the problem, being able to do audits of their in their organization, to audit of their policies, just all of their practices. So many gamuts of things you can do besides just delivering a training for 30 minutes.
Yeah. No, there's so many things I could say. I was reading some of these comments just now, Sable, with folks, especially with some of the things that have been going on. Obviously, we're in a very, divisive political environment right now, where their
announcement didn't help.
Yeah, exactly. So, I mean, there's a lot going on. I think one of the things that I love about what you're saying, though, is and someone else echoed this too, that the systems are connected. The systems are connected. And I think that's one of the things I really like about your work, because it's looking at how you can get in there. certainly from my perspective, one of my pieces of advice to coaches, especially, or trainers, especially, is, broaden beyond the one tool that you have. Don't think just in terms of training workshops. Don't think just in terms of coaching, even if that means building your bench and bringing on some people with some additional skill sets in terms of consultants or project managers or people who can write new policies and help the company change. What do you think? And I want to ask you about one of the big things I really want to talk to you about is globalization. I'm dying to talk to you about
absolutely,
that.
Absolutely.
But diversity is such an important issue right now that I want to focus on that too. What do you think? Because I look at a lot of the programs that companies put in place, and I'm not going to make any friends with this statement. I realize I'm going to be a little provocative with my statement, but so often I feel like the programs put the emphasis on, let's say, the woman, to change how she's showing up, in order to get into a place of leadership. I'm curious, though, what your thoughts are on what are some of the things that you feel organizations right now just need to do to flip the switch? Like, I love what Goldman Sachs did in terms of saying, look, we're not going to take people public anymore if they don't have diversity on their board of directors. We're not going to do your IPO if you don't have diversity. Now, they're not doing that out of some altruistic issue.
I know.
Like that's right. Like, that's all about. So I'm not like rosy, wearing rose-colored glasses about this, but I still like that they said, just do it. Just damn it, put diversity on your board. So
Europe has done it.
What's that?
Europe has done it, and it's still standing. They're still standing.
What do you think has to happen in the United States for companies just to freaking stop training everybody and developing everybody and just effing do it?
Yeah, a big part of it is do it. And, you said something in the very beginning. And I actually had kind of talked about this. I actually did a video on this. And I was like, we're not broken. Stop trying to fix us. Right. As women come in, we're like, oh, you need to be more assertive. Oh, you need to have a stronger presence. Oh, it's like you need to. And I'm like, we're not broken. Like, you created that system for you, and you never had us in mind. Your seats, we sit in them, we're not comfortable because you didn't have us in mind. Your policies, the way the whole organization is run was not for us. So don't ask us to change your system. Your system is broken. Your system does not accommodate us. I mean, look how long it took us to get parental leave, as if we were the only ones having these children all by ourselves. And so why did you not realize that was a broken system so long ago? So I would say that really what organizations need to do is look at their systems. I mean, one of the things that we do with our clients, and we're talking about looking at processes and looking at what's in your system that's not working. I mean, I can think of like 37 off the top of my head structural discrimination policies that probably every organization has, because we've always done it this way, and it impacts not only gender, but some of them also impact the Black community. So one of the things that, I think of all the time that comes to me is, I would say, ban the box. Here we have this box on all the applications of, have you ever been convicted of a crime? Well, it kind of sounds like, well, I need to know that, right? I really need to know if I'm going to hire a criminal. Really? I don't know. What do you do? Do you really need to know that? And if you think about the people who sometimes are checking these boxes are women, who most of the crimes that we commit as women are defending ourselves, defending our children, defending or feeding our family. And so or some guy that we're totally in love with, or someone we're totally in love with, has now convinced us to do something that we didn't really realize that we're doing. And so this kind of shatters our whole career. We might have done something like this at 20 or, really young, and then now we're impacted. And so this is something that's really where we're not looking at how these kind of policies and procedures are impacting the community of women and all women. And so I think that's something we need to look at. We still are not inclusive in terms of all women. We still have a very linear viewpoint towards what women that we're actually serving. And so many times, I know for sure, when we're looking at policies, we're asking, where's your transgender policies? What does your bathrooms look like? I mean, really still in 2020, we're still having that conversation, unfortunately.
We are.
And so, yeah, so there's so many things these organizations need to do. They need to fix themselves and stop trying to fix the women that are coming in.
I agree. And yeah, and all of the diverse communities fixing, coming in. I want to mention something, and then we're going to talk about globalization here, but there's actually a company in Baltimore. It's co-founded by a woman named Teresa Hodge, and the company is called R3 Score Technologies. I don't know, Vince, if you can grab that. R3 Score Technologies. She also co-founded a nonprofit called Mission Launch. But her name's Teresa Hodge, Teresa Hodge, Hodge. She actually talk about leading a movement, you guys. Talk about leading a movement. And Sable, what you just said reminded me of this. She actually created a company that does a different kind of employee background check, because she saw, especially in communities of color, people being denied job opportunities because of a mistake that they made, many years earlier. And the most traditional background companies are like so polarizing and so like you're bad or you're good, right?
Nothing in between.
And nothing in between. And she actually created a company that completely changes the way that companies do background checks on employees, so that in communities that have been disadvantaged, those folks are not stuck not having a good paying job for the rest of their lives. Now, one of the reasons I'm bringing this up to you guys is because if you're a coach, if you're a consultant, if you're a culture change expert, if you're a speaker, if you're, any of the professional services that Sable and I are here talking about, and you want to be a thought leader, you need to know about resources like this, so that what you don't want to do is ask a provocative question to the decision maker and not have an alternative suggestion for what they should do. So being able to say, well, have you ever thought about, instead of doing background checks that way, have you ever thought about using a company like R3 Score Technology? So if I were in the culture change space, Sable, I would have probably 30 to 40 resources that were innovative, so that when I walk into a corporate client, I've got a portfolio of, things that they could be looking at, not best practice policies that are not those outdated policies that companies have been doing for 30 years. And I think that's where I get really kind of hot under the collar when people want to be a thought leader. It's like, okay, great, but did you spend 2 days of your life? Like, think about all the time we waste on social media, right? What if you spent 2 days finding resources like that? So when you're consulting with the company, you can bring them alternatives to the status quo. How are you bringing alternatives? I know your company does that, but I just wanted to mention R3 because I'm so impressed by what they've done.
So don't be so hard on them, Angelique, because you know what? It is tough. It is tough to grow your business.
It is tough.
And to be a thought leader. And I think, that was really, really one of the reasons why we knew that. And we knew, so we're like, here's the resource.
Yeah.
And to the point that we include audio and article links in the resource, because we know that you really can't know it all. And it's so hard to be a thought leader. But if you are going to position yourself as a thought leader, I absolutely agree. You have to study your craft.
Yes.
You have to pay attention to what's going on beyond the headlines. You have to read down. I know, we always hear the thing about don't read down, but in this case, you have to read beyond the headlines and really understand what's happening in your industry, with your client, with your profession. So it is very, very, it's very critical. And you have to have a bag of tricks. You have to have, you just can't just be this one, okay, I'm the trainer and that's all that's all they're going to offer. It's kind of like that old statement. If I only have a hammer, then everything is a nail. You got to have a toolbox of so many different things to offer your client, because that's the only way. One of the things you always talk to us about is, being able to have a bridge strategy. You can't have a bridge strategy and talk about how I'm going to go from one engagement to the next if the only thing you have is another training.
Exactly.
another audit. You know, you
Or
have
another
to have
keynote,
that.
or another keynote that, yeah, like just go from keynote to keynote or workshop to workshop,
Yeah.
or another one-on-one coaching. Yeah,
Yeah,
for sure.
so we find it
Absolutely.
really important, for us to like make sure that you get all the different ways that you can service your client. It's so important that you can say, well, um, let's start off, with this offer, and then let's now look at what else we can offer you, and also being able to say, okay, well, maybe I did it this way for the last client, and it's not going to work, and know what's going on. Someone was saying to me like, oh yeah, we're definitely going to start doing a new trend in recruiting and we're going to do blind resumes. And I just felt like that is so 80s. I mean,
So 80s. I love it. I
not
actually,
quite 80s, but it's like there's nothing novel about that
80s,
anymore.
we're in 80s. I feel like this year's all 80s nostalgia. So you made me laugh when you say that. We're all like in 80s nostalgia. All right, let me ask you about globalization, because
Yeah.
you've done some things. I know your business has changed recently, but part of your work over the last 10 years has been to help businesses, especially women businesses, to expand globally. And I think, well, not everybody needs to expand globally tomorrow. The idea of expanding globally as being a thought leader is very important. The world is definitely more globalized. We're in kind of a weird space right now because the travel's restricted, but in many ways, companies are actually more connected internationally than they've
Yeah.
ever been.
Yeah.
So what are some of the strategies specifically for those who are thinking, my movement is so important to me. The work that I do is so important to me. I don't want to only own my backyard, as I always say, but I want to also get my mission and my movement more global. What are some of the just tangible, basic things that people can do to start reaching into some global markets?
I think first of all, you have to realize that usually the problem that you're solving here in the United States, it's still the same problem in another organization. So a lot of times we think, oh, I'm going to go global. I need to do things so like totally different. No, it's the same thing. You got to know who your client is. You got to know what problem you're solving for your client. All the same things that you do here, you have to know that as well. And so one of the things you want to look at is first is saying, okay, well, who has that problem, right? So who also has that same problem? And also think about, especially if your market is starting to get saturated. I say if you go to a networking event and 3 people just said they do the same thing that you do, then okay, it's time for you to start looking somewhere else. And this is a really great time to start looking global. And so one of the first things you can do is kind of say, okay, who has a similar community or senior population as my ideal client? Who else has that? What other country has that? And so that gives you an idea of where you're going. If it's a product, who also has the buying power that you might need? And ask yourself, do I need to make any adjustments? So if you're having electrical goods, in the United States, we use 110. I think us and maybe a few Caribbean islands where everyone else is using 220. So think about those practical things. If I'm going to go across the water and I have a product, it's an electrical product, what do I need to make a shift in that? And then you have to also kind of think about pricing. You have to think about weight. You have to think about your product description. What language is it that I have to actually put it in? Do I need to adjust the languages? Do I need to adjust the measurements on my product as well if I have a product that I'm taking out? If you're talking about services, one of the benefits we actually have as an Americans in this country is there's this assumption, and I want to say it's an assumption because that we actually have the knowledge. So we already have like going in some credibility. Just that blue passport, some credibility. Now, what you do with that credibility and how long you're able to, keep it up has a lot to do with what's in your toolkit, right? How have you established yourself as a thought leader? But definitely look at even some of your clients that you have here. Do they have branches in other countries? Asking them, hey, I did this work here, and I think it's also very applicable to your branch in New Zealand or your branch in, I don't know, France, and ask about it. One of the things we kind of think is I have to speak another language. That is not true. You do not have to speak another language always to do business in another country because English is the business language of the world. And so most times when you go over to other countries, Their English may not be at the same level as yours, but they also are very interested in learning. And so they usually have enough English that they can learn in a different language, in English as a language. So this is a great time, a great time to reach out. We're all home, pretty much. We're all central location. Reach out to these other organizations, pitch your services, pitch your products, start having Zoom conversations with them or Zoom meetings with them now. And so when it opens back up, you're ready. We already are starting to get ready for our trip when the doors finally open up to Finland, where we're taking women over because we want to see how did they get it right? How did Finland get it right? And it's a great way for us to learn from a country who has gotten it so correct when we talk about what they're doing with their women. And so that's an opportunity. So you cannot just like wait till the doors actually open. You got to be getting ready now. You got to start doing your research now.
Are you willing to share more about that? Because I think doing something like that would really be of interest, not on your topic, but I think that idea. So you know me, I'm all about best practice sharing. I'm all about best practice sourcing and emerging best practices. What is the emerging best practice? Because that establishes you as the thought leader to go into other organizations and say, this is the markets that are doing this. And when you can cross pollinate ideas, like a mark of a true thought leader is someone who cross pollinates ideas across industries, across fields, across geographic lanes. So can you talk more about this trip and what specifically you guys are going to be like? Who are you taking and what are you guys looking at in Finland? This is fascinating.
So we're taking diversity practitioners, and we're looking at companies in Finland who have, done very well. So we're meeting with their leaders, their senior management staff, so they can kind of talk to us about what practices are working, why is it not working. We're also going to be meeting with government officials as well to understand, how did they get some of the legislation they have. I mean, they are just so far ahead. One of the things that people always kind of like, well, how do I find someone? How do I know where I should go? How do I even reach a government official? United States, actually, if you just call, they want you to do business outside of this country. And we want people to come in to do business within this country. And only 2% of business owners are actually doing business. Small business owners, only 2% are doing business that are doing international business. And that's just such a small number considering how many people we have who are entrepreneurs, and considering that if you put the whole world together, that we've left out like 2/3 of a potential client base, depending on what you're selling or what you're doing. And so one of the things I would say, first place to start is look at your current clients and see if there's an opportunity there. Look at what's going on in another country, who right now, especially because of what's going on, who basically has been hit the most. Right now, we know even in Venezuela, they just had this flood. We know in Lebanon, they just had a tragedy. So what do you have that you might be able to bring into those countries? Because they may be in need. Because I mean, on this call, there are entrepreneurs with all kinds of services. And sometimes we always think when things are great, when the country settles down, then I'll go in. Go in now when the country is not settled, because they're looking for help, right? And sometimes they have money, and most of the times they do. Because we also kind of think that, oh, well, they don't really have it. A lot of countries are now saying, okay, how do I now get our country back together, after this? If you're a health person, how did they fare during this pandemic? Maybe they did very well. Maybe they didn't. Maybe there's more information that they can learn. So opportunities, I don't know, if I said galore, it just sounds so small. Because opportunities global are just huge for everybody, not just people who have a product, people who have a service as well.
And I think one of the things, and I have some great questions that have come in, you guys. So if you want to ask Sable a question, we're gonna switch over to some questions here because she is just a wealth of knowledge. I mean, she has been doing this for 20 years. She's worked all across Africa. She's helped business owners take products and services into other countries, and she's now helping folks really build out their diversity, equity, and inclusion work as well. So when I think about going in international, one of the things for me, because sometimes you don't always know who the organizations are, the companies, and certainly here in America, people are always complaining about getting contact information, then you try to do it internationally. But I'll tell you that international associations, trade associations, professional associations, especially when the events start coming back, but now you can do it through webinars. And, our conference, The Real Deal, is going to be hosted all virtually. So we have people joining from all over the world who don't have to travel. And, you can actually speak at those conferences. It's a phenomenal way to get in front. A couple of years back, Phil and I spoke at the World Water Conference in Amsterdam. I think it was called World Water Week in Amsterdam. And we walked through that trade show exhibit. I'm sure I have photos somewhere. We can probably find those. And I have to tell you, it was absolutely magnificent. I mean, cutting edge technologies to secure water, to make sure water is safe, that it's clean, that we have enough water for the world. And the amount of companies that were there. And Phil and I were getting bombarded while we were there for our insights, because there is a sense, especially here in the US, that we have a bit of a competitive edge and that we're often on the front end. But I have to be honest with you, I've never come back from an international trip for a business purpose and actually haven't come back with more of a wealth of knowledge than I went there with, right? So one of the questions that came in from Dr. Kristen here, she wants to know, Sable, can you give some specific examples of diversity, equity, and inclusion offerings beyond training programs and audits? So, sometimes we call them strategic desk audits or strategic asset reviews, right? But what can you do beyond the toolbox, beyond training and audits? What are some ideas for folks who really want to expand in that space?
So I'm going to use one that Angelique has taught us, Insight Papers, especially right now. It's a great tool to get in front of your clients, and also a great tool to now dissect that once you actually finish with your insight paper. So let me kind of give a little, insight to what insight papers are. So it's basically, just reaching out to clients who are potential clients and getting in front of them. And if you have a particular topic, it's always great if you do, and you actually know what you want to talk about with them. And then from that, once you actually develop that, that's your thought, that's your idea, that's really establishing you as a thought leader. And then taking that to other clients, other potential clients. That's something that's great to have in your toolbox. Another thing I would say that's also great to have besides insight papers, I would think about having case studies. That's something else. I would think about when you're talking about a client offering, what else could I offer my client besides an audit? Because now my brain is just like got a brain freeze. I can see it. Another thing I would probably say is there's development programs, there's mentorship programs, helping them to develop that. But one of the things I would say, one of the things we have in a lot of conversations around are allyships and helping to build out a program. So we know, like quite some time ago, we did a lot of work with employee resource groups. And now that has kind of changed into business resource groups. How is that company making that transition from an employee resource group to a business resource group? I would kind of help companies make that transition. I would help those companies build an inclusive culture by now helping them build an ally program right there inside their organization. That'd be something else that they would be very interested in doing. So whatever that you have to kind of think about, like, what are they asking you for? And then how you can actually do it. So it is part of like consulting. It could also be something where policies and procedures need to be looked at. And so where that's an audit, but how are they actually developing those products? You can also be the person that develops the policies and procedures for them. You can also kind of help them in direct awareness. And so a lot of times people celebrate the actual, like, Women's Day and Pride Day, but helping if you're talking about bringing your company inclusive, you have to look at more than just those days. And you have to kind of do something like, even when it's not a marked day on the holiday. So creating for them like an inclusive calendar of inclusivity, where they are now looking at how to be inclusive all the time. You can create an inclusive toolkit where you're now handing over to their managers. This is how you now create an inclusive environment. So I hope those, were a few
Oh,
things
no,
that
that's brilliant. I love that. I absolutely love that. And Dr. Kristen is saying thank you too, and that she specializes in allyship. I'll just add a couple of things to that. I think people often forget, in the small business space, a lot of you guys are familiar with VIP strategy days. We do VIP strategy days with
yeah,
clients all the time here at the Corporate Agent, but you can do strategy days, with corporate clients as well. Typically they don't know what they need to do, and unless you really roll up your sleeves and get paid to spend time understanding, we talk about discovery phases, stakeholder interviews, focus groups with employees, going and looking at what their competitors are doing, going and looking at what their what non-competitors are doing, and pulling in those ideas there, and also helping them to implement. David earlier today brought up a good point. We've been talking about this very thing since the Seize Your Moment 3-day seminar we did back in, what was that, you guys? April, I think we did this Seize Your Moment. And one of the things, Sable, we talked about at that, if you remember, was all about the fact that companies do have money to spend. But one of the areas that they're going to get hammered, you want to talk about urgency, you want to talk about a persistent issue that's going to happen for companies over the next 6 to 12 months. They're laying people off. Companies are laying people off. They're getting to the end of that requirement, especially here in the US,
yeah,
the,
yeah.
the payroll protection. Companies are laying people off. So here's what's going to happen: they won't have enough arms and legs to get done everything that they need to get done. And so I just want to put out there to you guys, I started, David Newman was talking about starting his business at the one recession. I started my business right before the Great Recession in 2009. I left my job in 2006, really got the business going in 2007. And then here we were in 2008, heading into the Great Recession. So, but one of the things I was able to do was not just do training, not just do consulting. I was able to build a bench of people who could actually, Sable, to your point, write those policies, create those programs, because the company didn't have the arms and the legs to do it because they had laid off people. And so they needed more bandwidth. So one of your best things that you have to offer to companies right now is your bandwidth. I absolutely love that. Another great.
I want to say something on that, because companies are also laying off, especially if you really understand HR and diversity, you can help them look and make sure that they don't have lawsuits waiting for them on the other side of this. Because with these terminations, you can help them kind of say, like, well, who are you terminating? You can also help them, and when they start laying off, create an outsourcing package, like basically one that does not just focus. Usually the first thing we do is kind of like, let's give out retirement packages. So that could have an ageism effect.
Yep.
Because now it's like, oh, you just dumped all your people over 40. Well, that's a problem. And so now helping them create a way to start to reduce their staff, but in a way that it's more voluntary versus involuntary, by helping them create very creative programs. I mean, I remember when I was in corporate, we wanted 7,000 people to leave. 11,000 people raised their hand because the programs were just so great. So that's something that really, at this time, I'm so glad you brought that up. When this expiration date is coming and companies are like, what are we going to do now? Well, you can help them make sure that when they're laying people off or asking people to leave, it is a way that when they say goodbye, everybody is like, I'm happy to go, and we're happy to let you go. And there's no lawsuits at the other end, because when you you're looking at the equity part of it. You also have to think about, once everyone walks out of the door, who's left behind? How are you going to keep this organization still going? How are you going to keep the morale still going? That's an opportunity that you can use and work with them. You can also look at industries that are already suffering in diversity. And so now you're going to target them and say, hey, you better slow down, Mr. Tech, Mrs. Manufacturing, and not make sure that when you're letting people go, you are not letting go the people who you need the most. And why do you need them the most? Not simply for their numbers, because we know that diversity is a business case, and you're going to need them for that productivity. You're going to need them for that creativity when your organization has really become so lean. So I think that is an amazing, amazing opportunity. why organizations are scrambling to do something right now, strategic planning. If you can sit down, most of them don't have no idea how to create a diversity plan. They have no idea. You know, it's kind of like hire people, promote people, train people. That's the plan.
What a tremendous opportunity for coaches, consultants, experts, mission-driven, business owners and entrepreneurs. What a tremendous opportunity to help companies with this.
Yeah.
One of the things that right before the pandemic, I was in New York for a meeting. I was at the Ernst & Young office. That's where they hosted it. But it was with Virgin Unite's 100% Human at Work initiative. And we do, the group of us who are part of that, there's like a webinar that we do about every 2 weeks. It's really great. But at that meeting, a senior vice president from Unilever was there. And they were talking to us about what's going on, Sable, inside of Unilever. And you just made me recall that conversation because she was talking about how organizations are really rethinking, including Unilever, the life cycle of the employee.
Mm-hmm.
And they want to move beyond the idea that people come into a company, they maybe get promoted a few times or not, and then they quit, or in this case, get laid off because there's, recessions happening. And then they go on to work somewhere else. Like, what if that life cycle was completely reimagined? What if the way that great talent interacts with companies was completely reimagined to be more fluid, more agile, and it wasn't so black and white between you're either a full-time employee or you're not
Yeah.
a full-time employee? And what I heard you say there in terms of the way that they're thinking about doing those layoffs, I mean, let's think we could challenge them even more as organizations to think, well, maybe there's an entirely different model you could look at altogether in how you're doing this. I know a lot of people right now, one of the companies that we also just heard from through the 100% Human at Work initiative is a company called Menlo. And they're an IT software company. They've had over 3,000 people tour their offices, something like 3,000 people over the years tour their offices because their work culture is so unique. For those of you in Velocity, I'll share a quick picture with you that they shared with us. And they have 2 people working per computer all day. They people all day long in their environment working at one computer.
Wow.
They've completely re-envisioned what an office environment looks like and how people work. And I think I'm so inspired by the fact I think companies can really question everything right now.
And we should. And this is a great time to we've already heard so many companies already say we're never coming back. So you have to think about, okay, they're never coming back. And when we talk about, I want to go to that point. You talked about how they start reimagining their workforce, especially with our smaller business owners as well. So one of the things, and especially in certain industries where we know there's a high turnover, what we had did with one of our clients when we were in Nigeria is basically let them know you're a birthing stool. So don't worry about having a retirement plan, a 401k, a pension. You are a birthing stool. And so when you now change and understand that people are coming in your organization and they are going to leave, the average lifespan of an employee is going to be 3 to 5 years, then you position yourself that way. You also, and you don't get I spent so much money on this employee, I invested so much in this person. You realize that, it's their time to go. Because even though people are staying, are they really engaged? So that's not even a sign of a healthy organization when you have, a whole bunch of people there and no one's moving as well. So I think the opportunities are just so great and so many things that we could do. We just have to take that time to kind of like sit down and think. And I know it's so difficult as a small business owner. A lot of us are solopreneurs. You have a small team, or it's just you and the laptop and the kitchen table, and thinking like, where do I get time to look for clients and be a thought leader? But you gotta do it. You have to do it. You cannot skirt it, because you can't go into someone's office and offer fantastic offerings if we don't know what's going around us. If we don't know what's going on. around us.
Yeah, I mean, that's just gold advice right there, Sable. It really is. I mean, I think the good news though is I actually think when we put the right priorities into our day versus say editing a website for the 79th time, not that anybody does that, you guys, I know, right? Or
I
tinkering
wasn't
with
going to
the
give away your
LinkedIn, right?
16-hour formula.
Exactly, or tinkering with the LinkedIn again. But if you're focused on this, it's even going to make anything that you do in your business development so much more powerful because you're going to be bringing such knowledge. It's just going to ooze. It's just going to ooze out of you all of
Yeah.
that knowledge. I have one final question for you, and then we're going to wrap up because I know we're getting up there, and I want to get a field assignment from you, Sable, for
Okay.
everyone. I
Okay.
want to get a field assignment from you. But someone did ask if you could just talk about, and I thought this was such a great question, so I wanted to hit on it. A great question about, you mentioned the evolution of employee resource groups to business resource groups. And
Hmm.
certainly, employee resource groups have been around for quite a while. If you don't know what those are, you guys go Google employee resource group because it's a long definition. And I don't want to take this time here to do that. But can you just say, someone was asking, can you just say more about that evolution quickly?
Yeah, I mean, we keep saying that diversity is a business case, right? We say that. And we've written business cases and we sell it as a business case. But then we have employee resource groups, and they are not supported a lot of times financially um, by the organization because they don't seem like they're a business need. And they're so disconnected to what's happening in the organization. So here you have this employee resource group, and it's really like kumbaya. Everybody gets together. We're, talking about, oh my gosh, it's so tough for women. Oh my gosh, it's so tough for moms, and we do that, and then we leave out. And the company's like, so how did that help us?
Mm.
Whereas a business resource group says, let me hear from you. What are your objectives? What are your diversity, equity, inclusion objectives for this
Wow.
year? And let's see how our group can link in to help this organization achieve that. So you say that you want to hire more women. Hey, we're the women's group. What are we doing to help plug that? What jobs are we, now having seminars within our BRG? What seminars are we having? What speakers are we doing? What training are we doing? What sponsorships sponsors are we having to help people move from those into those roles? And making sure that we're positioned. So a business ERG is linked to the organization goals and what they're actually working on. So it's, are you going to have a little kumbaya? Absolutely. You'll have that. But your main focus is about the business, because too many times, especially, I always have to talk about women. Too many times as women, we're developing these programs for women and we're training them for profit and loss statement roles, which means they're in a dead end. They're just in a dead end. But if we as a BRG is looking at the organizational goals, you look at the track of what it took for people to get there, then the BRG for women can now say, you know what? No, we don't want that role for her. We're going to train her for this role because that's going to lead to the C-suite. Otherwise, it's just everybody gets to high-five themselves. Oh yeah, we've got 5 women that we promoted to general manager, and then that's it. It's over. Or we have another 5 women we put, as a VP, but she still never makes it to the C-suite. So it's really important that they have that linkage.
That is, I mean, honestly, that right there, what you just shared was worth the price of admission to this whole day. I'm telling you, no, I'm serious. I hope that you guys, the brilliance in what Sable is saying about the change and the come from for those groups and teaching them to be strategic in what they're doing. Absolutely brilliant. Whoever asked, can't remember who asked that question. I am so glad you asked that question. That is ridiculous. It takes a lot, Sable, to blow my mind. And I'm sort of sitting at that going, holy shit. So, yeah, because I mean, it's the whole idea of being a strategic problem solver in the organization. Do you know how many
Absolutely.
departments and teams say they want to be a strategic partner to the business, but then they're not thinking strategically and thinking in terms of P&L and
Yeah.
thinking in terms of the business's actual way of making money? And the ERGs are often just kind of patted on the head as like these nice little clubs
Yes. Yes.
instead of being strategic partners to the business. I am just like, I'm completely, damn,
I mean, so many areas.
love it.
Product development. They should not be developing products without having the BRG
Wow.
involved in that conversation.
Wow. Right. Right. So, how many of you guys have corporate clients right now that have their ERG? So, I just want you guys to think about this. How many of you have clients, past or present, that have employee resource groups, that you know they have employee resource groups, who are not utilizing them strategically in their organizations right now? That's an example of how to reach out and add value. You know, we're always talking about, you have to invest into these relationships first. You
Yep.
have to bring something to the table that's of value to them for a problem that they have that is happening now in their organizations, and they have resources and brain power that's not even being fully tapped.
Yep.
This is, oh my gosh, Sable. All right, so let's do this. We could keep going. You're absolutely amazing. What is a field assignment? What is a homework assignment, a field assignment that we can give to everyone today, that they can start taking action this evening on?
Okay, so I want to talk, so I'm not excluding anyone, but I want to talk really to our diversity practitioners, our consultants
Perfect.
on the phone, because I know after this weekend, especially anyone who is doing any race, they're all freaked out. Like, oh my gosh, I'm broke. I need to go file Chapter 13. So I'm going to say, don't do that. I want you to reach out to your client. Reach back out to your client, the ones that even the ones that you're working with, the ones that said, no, I'm not ready. Reach out to at least, I'm going to say 3. Because if I say 3, maybe a good one, right? And say, hey, I want to talk to you about this program that we're doing and how this is going to change the culture of your organization, how this is going to improve the productivity, how this is going to move you when the doors finally open, and if the doors never open, to still be the leader in your industry. This program, this, whatever you call it, race relations, whatever it is, because if you wait until they sit there and think in their head, should I cancel? Should I be doing this? Am I being decisive? If this is not working, you're going to lose them. You have to be proactive. You got to remind them of why they signed the dotted line, why they signed up for it. You can't wait for them to ask. It's too late. By the time they ask, they're already thinking, is this still a good idea?
Oh,
You got to remind them, this is a wonderful idea. This is what you need. And tell them, those who dump are going to be the ones who are going to be behind. And this is why they're going to be ahead, because they continued. They continue with the work.
I love it. So let's do this. I'll just make it work for everyone, because I know not all of you are in that space. I want to really, really light a fire under those of you doing the diversity work. I really, really, really want to light a fire under you guys doing the diversity work on this, because it's so important. We have so much work to do. Those of you who are in my Velocity program saw some of my personal stories that I shared this week on the Facebook group, and how I was, you know, affected, and the perspective, the view that I had on some of this stuff. It's very, very important that we do this work. So if you're in the case, if you're not in the diversity, inclusion, and equity space, I'm still going to encourage you to reach out to 3 clients, to reiterate the value and the importance of the work that they're doing, because a lot of things are being questioned right now. Priorities are being questioned. So I want you guys all to do that. Now, David also has you emailing, reaching out to folks. So I'm going to make this one for the homework, but I want you, if you can do all 3, I want you to do all 3, but I know homework's due at midnight tonight, Eastern time. So I want you guys to reach out. And Sable, in your case, just so I can summarize, let me make sure I'm hearing you correctly.
Mm-hmm.
You want them to reach out and really reiterate the importance of why they need to do this work right now. Did I summarize that correctly?
Yeah, remind them why it's so important. why they have to continue doing it. And you don't have to ask. I mean, you don't want to say to them like, should we continue doing this? But just check in, emphasize again why this is great. Talk about the progress you've made so far. Remind them of where you're going and helping them to really feel that reimagined culture that you're developing through your work. And so they can get excited about it again. Because especially what happens, and I want to say this quickly, one thing that sets into organization is diversity fatigue. And diversity fatigue happens where organizations get tired of just keep talking about it, planning about it, and get tired of paying for it. And before that organization gets into diversity fatigue or even personal development fatigue, right? In any field.
I was going to say, I think it's really, I'm going to go so far as to say it's actually personal development, and leadership development fatigue.
Yeah, we get fatigued. We're like, all right already, right? All right already. And so before that organization gets fatigued, before you start seeing people talking about it, before you look in your classrooms, on your Zoom calls, and there's less people on there. I mean, just think about how many people were in the beginning and now how people are not showing up on their camera. Fatigue is setting in.
It really is. I mean, there's pandemic fatigue. There is Zoom fatigue. There is leadership development fatigue.
That
is.
You've got to get ahead of it. You've got to get ahead of it. You've got to be right in front of it, and you've got to get them all excited all over again. This is a relationship. This is a relationship that constantly has to be nurtured. And I think sometimes we get the client, we service the client, and we're doing the work, but we forget that we should be still romancing the client, even while we're doing the work. So not only can we get other opportunities, but so this opportunity doesn't even get lost on why they were even doing it. So I don't want us to get satisfied that we signed a contract. We got to keep going. We got to keep going.
That is absolutely brilliant. Somebody just also added in here, it's change fatigue. It's change fatigue. And I think that's a really good point. You know what, though? That opens up a whole new can of worms, because let me tell you something, you guys, the world is in for change like it has never seen before.
Yeah.
If we think that World War II changed the globe and changed in the industrial and commercial space and travel and, women in the workplace and all the sort of socioeconomic impacts that we saw out of World War II, that's really nothing. That's like a drop in a bucket compared to the change that's coming our way, not just because of the pandemic and the economic impact, but because of advanced automation and AI that are coming. I mean, right now you've got major car brands literally testing flying cars, and we're going full, the full automation. Those of you guys who heard the Lead Your Movement interview I did a couple of weeks ago with Kathy Fisher out of the automotive space. So buckle up, because we are like, this is like the appetizer.
We haven't started changing yet. I mean, this change that we're doing right now is out of necessity, right? So we haven't even got into the creativity and the innovation and the luxury part of change. So right now it's just survival change. Like, we got to figure out another way to shop. We got to figure out another way to work. But what happens, once we're like, the innovation of having an exciting life kind of change hits. I mean, I love that, the change fatigue. People are getting exhausted, but we've got to get excited.
We have to build the resilience. Yeah, we have to build the endurance, the stamina, and the resilience for change. I mean, those are three big words right now, resilience and stamina. And it's absolutely brilliant. Somebody cracked me up. They just said, we have a shortage of coins, however, no shortage of change. I love it.
When you talk about that, I think we have to remind ourselves that not only do we need it, but we have to help our clients through it.
Yeah. Well, it's a business opportunity. It's a business opportunity. And that's really, I think, what you're speaking to. And there is opportunity galore. I'll never stop. One of our brand promises at the Corporate Agent is that we're the opportunity illuminators. And, that really our focus, first and foremost to our clients is helping them to first. You can't create anything in your business. You cannot create growth. You cannot create more revenue, and you cannot create more impact unless you first see where the opportunity for that is. If you don't see it first, you can't create it. So
Now,
there you go. This is amazing. Sable, thank you so very much. How can people, as we wrap up here, how can people find you? How can they connect with you? Where can they learn more?
so I actually had a gift as well.
Oh, awesome.
So I have two things. So I have a gift, and then I'm going to tell you how you go. So we actually, in this day of we're all sitting on our computers, too many times we forget that our camera is on, and we get up and we have seen the videos on TV. So we don't want you to be that person. So we came with 3 of our webcam privacy sliders that are branded.
Oh, that's awesome.
So
I love that.
yeah, so we came with those. So this way you keep your professional outlook at all times. So how would you get that? So if you just go to our, I'm going to send you to My Diversity Hub.
Okay.
So go to mydiversityhub.com and just click on the thing where it says strategic partner, and then put inside in your request, that you're requesting. So how should we give it out? Should we give it to only the ones who do their homework?
Oh, wait, are you giving out 3?
Yep.
Then we can pick them for you tomorrow.
All right. So I'm going to let Angelique pick them for you.
Yeah, with the most exuberant. We'll go through. We'll have Ariel go through the people who have the 3 most exuberant response in their homework, Sable, and then Ariel will give you their names, and we can send those to you.
Okay, perfect.
We'll make it super easy. Super
that's
easy.
Perfect. Thank you. So reach out to us on My Diversity Hub if you're sitting here and you're stuck and you're like, I don't want to do another unconscious bias training. I got to do something different. Reach out to us, or you have 15 trainings and you can't figure out. Just reach out to us. I would love to have a conversation with you. I would love to point you into the next direction on what you're going to need to go, because we started. This work has just started.
Oh,
so
I love
thank
it.
you so much, Angelique. This has been a pleasure.
Oh my gosh, Sable, you're amazing. I love that quote. This work has just started. This work on diversity has just started. This work, y'all, on leading your movement has just started. Sable, thank you so very much. Thank you.
Thank you.